Hello, everybody. I'm Frank Stanisci of CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on CFL Talk, joining me is the well-traveled David Morassutti. And producing is Eduardo Harari, who is also a world traveler, at least when it comes to Hamilton. Eduardo, why don't you come in here too?
I think he wants to hide.
I
He
think
might have run away from us.
Probably tired. He's probably sleeping now. I told him I was tired, so it's going to make me jealous and have a nap. Anyway, okay, well, let's go to the story, and of course, the story is the Canadian Football League. And first of all, I want to start by mentioning that disappointing numbers come out as far as television is concerned. 219, the numbers are about 22% down. That's too bad because I think it was a great game to give a lot of rise to the excitement that the Canadian Football League can generate on the field.
I also think it's also the changing landscape of where people are going with their way that they're doing their consumption, right?
Yeah.
How many people still have cable nowadays?
But still, it's also the fact that the game's on TSN and not on CTV. I'm not trying to take it away from Bell Media.
And usually, if I'm not mistaken, they have put the Grey Cup on CTV before.
Many, many years ago. It's been a while since TSN came into existence. Nope. But they should, and I think that's one of the problems. But they can't justify the airtime, and I, to be honest, probably the commercial return.
Oh, and that's usually what's the biggest thing, right? Commercial return, right? You get it on the bigger on the more accessible channel. But I think and the person who reports all this, Adam Seaborn, very good follow if you're looking on social media. It's at AHB Seaborn, like CESEA. But he said it was 2.873 million on TSN and only 821,000 adults aged ranged from 25 to 54.
The key demographic.
Key demographic. That's the one that determines really I wouldn't say success or failure, but it really tells you, are they grabbing the audience that they want? And if you're looking at advertisers, Frank, you just mentioned this, they want the 25 to 54 audience because, hate to say it, and I'm gonna, Frank, don't hate me for this.
Oh,
The 55 plus club, that's not who advertisers are targeting in a lot of their ads now. If
I
you're
got
looking,
no money. That's why.
exactly, retired people are gonna hold their money. People
Well,
who
they're
are
not holding money. They don't have money. Can't spend what you don't have. I know some people try to. I know that. No, regardless, the point is that's the number that they're going after, and the number that they're getting of that number is not good enough. Then, the amount of those people they're getting is not enough. We've talked about this every week. Now, we don't want to do a whole show on why the CFL needs to upgrade its, interest level. One thing's for sure. We heard the commissioner talk, since we're on this topic, genius, but I kept seeing on the screen genie, but they called it genius. I'm confused. I really am confused about the name of that company. And then supposedly it's a company that's, a new age company that is they have a template and or a plan for putting fans and leagues together. They also have a lot to do with gambling, which you and I both know, is an important part of sports nowadays, only because sports have opened themselves up to it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, when you look at what companies, you look at the companies that are working with Genius right now. Premier League is the biggest one that they named.
NFL too.
NFL too, but like if you're, I hate to say it, Premier League does a lot, but like we in North America, I don't think truly grasp what the Premier League does overseas, not just in the UK but elsewhere too. Um, yeah, no, but this is all about the CFL having to modernize their business, because this is a league that's unfortunately, you know, in some ways people feel caters to the fans that are there, and the fans that are there, a lot of them would say, are the older crowd. Now, I think the biggest, if and I know there's a lot of confusion about what this whole deal was and what they're working towards. The biggest one I think for me is gambling, because the gambling revenue alone can be a big plus for the CFL if done right. Of course, when you can't do it yourself, what do? You find someone who has the expertise that can do it for you. Here
Absolutely.
lies the reason they brought Genius aboard.
The whole reason.
Yeah, I really do think that this is I think their first I think they're the biggest impact you're going to see from this partnership right away is the gambling aspect. Trying, because really that's why a lot of people are into other football leagues and other sports. There's money to be made off of them.
And it
CFL.
goes into an account. They've opened an account with Genius, the CFL has, and the money that Genius can generate through the CFL, and all their properties and all that stuff goes into the account. And I believe they get, what did he say, 25%? I think he said.
He didn't really
I think he
specify.
says 20 or 25%.
That probably sounds about right. Usually companies take anywhere from 30% and lower in those cases.
So
But yeah.
if they generate $1 million, the
Mhm.
CFL will keep about 750,000. That'll be money that they get that they weren't getting till today. Like, this is new money. It's a new account that's opening up. And basically the money made is going to be fresh money, new money, money that all the leagues are looking for. That's the thing. We hear them talk all the time about where are we going to find our new streams of income. This is the thing. So, monetary streams are hard to develop, especially brand new ones. They're going after it. Good for, the CFL. How soon do you think, or how quickly can we see some sort of um, money that does get generated, and will it be of any significant amount, do you think?
That's a good question. I think it's going to take time. I really do. To build a gambling infrastructure does take time. I think maybe you'll start seeing the benefits later in the year when, you know, it's so tough, but playoffs is usually where the biggest take, because, games are a little more predictable in some ways. I think it will take time. I don't think it's going to happen right away. Maybe the CFL has been ahead of it a little bit more. We don't know.
Not
Um,
at all.
Not at all. So it's going to take time. I don't think like right away you're going to start seeing the CFL make a lot of money, because the first thing they have to do is they have to get people invested, people to get into this, right? You have to build that audience. Building that audience doesn't happen in a snap.
And then when we say that, we're talking also about, um, quite frankly, about sharing income, right? Revenue sharing is, at least it sounds like the commissioner thinks it's going to happen, or it's already a fait accompli. I know, and and anybody who's followed the CFL for any length of time knows that there are a lot of teams that don't want to do revenue sharing. And if you heard the press conference, the question was, how can the community teams in the West even contemplate the thought of revenue sharing and giving money to a $1 billion corporation like MLSE?
Yeah. And you know what? I totally get that side of it, because when you see how much revenue the MLSE brings in from the Leafs, from the Raptors alone, you can understand why they feel that way. But at the same time, I think what the commissioner's trying to do right now, he wants all nine teams to pull together to make everyone a success. And what's the best way to do that? Hey, Toronto starts making money, or no, doesn't lose as much money. Let's maybe go that. Maybe before we even say make money, let's try to get them close to even. You will see the benefit of it, and I think that's what the commissioner's trying to do. Is he's trying to get all the teams to buy him, because I feel like, and I think Frank, you understand this too, that not everyone is on the same page when it comes to how things are run by the league.
Yes, true, and because they have a different, the ownership groups are not, they're not similar. There's ones that are similar, but as a group, they're not similar. You have three community-owned groups, and then you have one big corporation, MLSC. Then you have some rich owners that, for example, Montreal. I'm going to start with them. Montreal, Hamilton, and BC, that have rich owners that have a personal interest in their team. And then you have, the other teams that basically are interested in the game, but are owned by hockey teams, like Calgary. So, you have a different makeup. So the important thing here is that financially, if the Toronto Argonauts continue to lose at the rate they do lose, the interest in MLSC in keeping the team is going to shrink, because they're not in the business of losing money. And people who think that, oh, they're so rich they can afford to, lose millions after millions after millions. No company, no organization ignores the board. And the board, the first thing they ask is, how much money did we make this year? And why are we making less? Never mind losing money. Why are we making less? It's not even a question of they don't want to lose money. They don't want to make less money. And that's understandable. Every business has the right to think that way.
There's the old saying is, how do the rich stay rich? They try to keep as much of the money to themselves as they can.
By not getting poorer. That's
Exactly.
rich.
I hate to say, I mean, how much do you think the Argos lose a year? Do we want to say
5.
maybe 5 to 8 million?
I say at least 5.
Okay. Some they will say, well, MLSE makes XX, but losing 8 doesn't look good on any company, no matter how much they make. It doesn't. But it also just shows the unsustainable. The last thing I think the CFL wants to see is that, every year we're expecting our teams to lose $5 to $8 million.
It's not just about money.
Yeah.
We can finish the money thing.
Yeah.
I agree. Not everybody wants, but I think it's also the perception. The perception of failure taints everybody. The more teams you have that are in financial trouble, it impacts the teams that are making money, because uh, it leans on their credibility too. It's not just like, if the Argos fail, Montreal fails, Ottawa fails, BC fails, the whole league fails to a degree, right? So that's why you want to make sure that every team looks strong. And if every team is strong, that gives you more of a leg up with advertisers, because that's the issue, is that if you have teams that are not doing well, the inference by possible sponsors is, well, your game's not that popular. Obviously it doesn't help in making, giving the CFL an opportunity to make as much money as they can.
Exactly. We're like, what we're talking about here is finding ways to not just make money, but to make the product attractable to other people who want to get involved with it. Advertisers, as you said, Frank, are not going to look at this league and say, you guys fail to get to the younger demographic in a lot of places. Maybe, sure, Saskatchewan probably doesn't have that problem. Winnipeg probably doesn't have that problem. But in the big cities where you have the big corporations with the big pockets looking to find ways to extend their reach through advertising and marketing, you need the big cities to, like, I don't know how many times I think people in these, hey, say Saskatchewan, Winnipeg are the biggest ones, because I've heard, when I hear it from the media members bashing Toronto, I say, well, what do you expect? Like, when the perception is like that in Winnipeg and Saskatchewan, what do you think it's like in Toronto?
Yeah,
And putting
it doesn't help.
putting down the team does. That's why I always say putting down the team doesn't do anything. If it feels like it makes you cool to pick on the, it's almost like picking on the kid that's already been kicked down.
Yep. Well,
What's
picking on people who are already down. Absolutely. All right.
ridiculous?
Well, let's leave the money issue there. Okay. So we know that that this Grey Cup game was of interest, created some interest. Obviously, a lot of interest in Hamilton and of course Winnipeg. I'd like to talk about the week that was at the Grey Cup. I had a chance to go to a lot of the stuff. There was supposed to be nothing going on, but it wasn't nothing. There was some great parties there that were going on, and it was a lot of fun. It wasn't to the same level and degree as it's been, in previous years and previous locations. But still, it was a lot of fun when you consider this was the Grey Cup festival that wasn't to be, because it pretty much was advertised as, well, listen, this is just a dry run. Don't worry about it, folks. We'll be back in 2 years here in Hamilton, and we'll do this again. And by then, it's going to be one of those situations where we'll be able to act more freely. And we'll talk about that as well, about, moving around freely at the Grey Cup. So that was a bit of an issue, but it wasn't a disappointment for me. I went out a couple of times, saw some stuff, and it was very interesting, and there was a lot of partying. There were the regular folks that I've seen over the years, but there weren't as many. That's factual. There weren't as many, fans and from out of town, and you could tell at the game, that was a real good indicator. Usually in Grey Cups, there's representation from all 9 teams, not just the 2 that are playing. We didn't really see that this year. It was mostly as it was in 2013 with Regina. Regina had, they had the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Their fans dominated in the stands against Hamilton. It was much like that, but that was for a different reason. That was they're willing to pay top dollar to go. And there were still a lot of people around, at all events and stuff, but it was pretty cold that year in Saskatchewan. So, David, I don't know what you noticed. I know you kind of flew in and flew out, so it might be unfair to ask you that question, but from your perspective, what did you think was going on at the Grey Cup?
Yeah, so I only came down for during the Grey Cup week leading up to the game. I only came down for the one day because first off, I didn't really think about the drive to Hamilton and back. That I knew it was going to be a pain, but it is really a pain when you really think about it. I think part of it is a lot of CFL fans probably wondered, what's the point of going to the Grey Cup when you don't get to fully experience the Grey Cup in the way
True.
we supposed
I
to?
think that was part of it. I
And
think that was part of it.
also, if I had a Grey Cup ticket and I knew the Hamilton Tiger Cats fans really wanted those tickets and maybe make a little profit off of it, probably going to sell it because that game sold out as soon as the Tiger Cats won.
Absolutely.
We knew that was going to be. I knew it was going to be a Tiger Cat friendly crowd, and what, Frank, you and I saw on the field yesterday, there were quite a few Winnipeg fans there as well.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It wasn't a lot, but it was significant enough that when they won, that they had some people around to fans that they could cheer with. But I do think, yes, I do think the whole COVID experience, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. The getting tested
Well,
anytime you went
we're
to.
gonna we're gonna find out in a week or 2,
Well, yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, no, very true. You know, making sure that you're following the protocols.
Yeah, that's what you're
Stuff
talking about.
like
You're talking
that.
about, well, the experience all week. All
Yeah.
week, I was tested to see if I had COVID, and then if I didn't, I was able to take part in all the events. Had to be double vaxxed. That was your first threshold you had to cross. And as I said, you had to pass each and every test. On game day, I didn't pass the test right away, but the reason that was is there were 2 people handling my case. One of them handed me the stuff to do, and the other one, before I had a chance to even put it in and for any kind of lasting time. The idea is the antigen test works in the sense that if you are not positive of COVID, it starts to turn blue. And the longer you have it in there, the darker blue it gets, because you're basically testing negative for for COVID. Well, they took it right out, and I got taken aside. Sir, we have to talk to you. Sir, your test shows that you might have COVID. I went, Okay. And then I said, "I'll just tell you one thing, if I can tell you something." I never got a chance for it to sit inside the liquid. It didn't sit inside what she goes. She looks at me and then looks at the guy, and the guy gave her the look like you took it out too soon. So we
This
did
is
it
why
all over
this is
again.
called the strip, right? The little test.
Yeah, yeah, the little test strip. So then we tried it again, and then it started turning blue, and then I was fine. It's this is the thing about testing. There's false positives. That's a reality. There's different reasons for it. I've just explained one that I witnessed firsthand, that I saw how that worked. So I tested fine each and every time. We went through. It was a bit of an inconvenience. That goes without saying. And for those of you that have experienced it, you know what I mean. We didn't get we didn't have to shove the swab down your nose and all that. Just had to wear your nostrils, breathe in air, and that's it. So it was an interesting experience, I got to say. As far as COVID was concerned, wearing masks, everybody wearing masks, everybody making sure they wear masks. The players were allowed to take the masks off when they were talking during interviews. So it was okay. It seemed kind of normal for those of you that were watching on TV.
Yeah, and I think that we're seeing now with cases going up that vaccinations are we're seeing why they were pushing the vaccinations, not because I always have to remind people it's not about having a negative test with the vaccine. It's about keeping yourself from getting really sick.
And
Right.
occupying a spot in the hospital. That's all
Exactly.
it's about.
Right. And that's why it was very important that this game, everyone there, like you go to the stadium, everyone had to anyone that had to go in the press box, go on the field, had to do a COVID test. I saw family members of both teams having to do that because at first I was confused. I saw people in jerseys. I'm like, are certain fans getting tested? And I realized, oh, it's family members. That makes a little more sense. Um, yeah. So and I saw and I followed the rest of the week on social media with some of the reporters. You know, they were talking about they were still able to do some of the partying, the socializing that was done in past, not to the same degree, but there was still that around. So the spirit of Grey Cup week was still around.
Extremely,
Maybe
yeah.
it was around. It wasn't as prevalent, um, which is I think maybe that luckily for the CFL there was at least something
Mhm.
because I don't know how much money they expect to make off of Grey Cup week. I know it's more for the city. And that's why 2 years from now in 2023, Hamilton will get another opportunity because they didn't get the full experience of, having bigger events that, fans would pay for and the city would make a little bit of money off of. So,
Or
yeah,
not lose a lot of money and get a chance to get the opportunity to make some money. Yeah, the way the Grey Cup works now, it used to be that the teams that hosted made all the money. Now it's shared amongst all the CFL teams. And in this case, it would have been the cost. If there was a loss in money, they would all share in the responsibility for recovering that money, or providing that money. So it's a team effort now. So as far as I can say, as far as we stand right now, the COVID reaction was successful by the Canadian Football League. We know that we're going to talk about the game shortly. That's the most important thing. So we're saving the best for last. We know that the week of the Grey Cup Festival was awesome. We know also that we had some interesting conversation, which if I can review for folks, and those who just joined us, we talked a little bit about the Commissioner's State of the League conference. Also, with the fans were very gentle to the commissioner. Um, for the most part, the fans were pretty positive, which I found surprising. I think, though, that that's a reflection, David, of the fact that they were glad to be at the Grey Cup. Because when I watched that, it wasn't as negative as it has been in past years.
yeah, I think yeah, I was a little surprised to hear that the fans were because I've heard a lot of criticism of Randy Ambrosi and things that have been done. I do think that they didn't want to pour salt on the wound in that case, and they were happy to be at the Grey Cup. And sure, there was probably, and look, Hamilton Tiger Cats fans really don't have much to complain about when it comes to the commissioner. The
Hmm.
team is doing well on the field. They're filling the stadium. Really, there was. I mean, I'm sure
They're
Frank.
getting a second Grey Cup.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Hamilton Tiger Cats fans were pretty happy just to have the opportunity to be there and all those things. So
And they did a great job. Hamilton was a fantastic host. Steve Milton, he is a writer for The Spectator, the Hamilton Spectator. Eduardo and I, our producer, we got there early, and he chauffeur drove us so that we could go see the Grey Cup arriving. The Grey Cup arrival was amazing. It was amazing when the helicopters landed, and there was a slight amount of snow on the lawn, and it was like a sandstorm. It was amazing. So that was fun too. I got to meet the two RCMP officers that were carrying the Grey Cup at the Grey Cup yesterday. So that was fun. The other thing that I think is also important to note is that the community in Hamilton was very excited about the Grey Cup being in town, even though maybe the Grey Cup festival was played down. The people in Hamilton, wherever you went, you knew the Grey Cup was in town. And to me, that's the best contribution a city can make, is acknowledgement of the event that's taking place in their local community.
yeah, this is something that the city took pride in, right? This wasn't, so, let's say in Toronto, it's not exactly the front of the page news about Grey Cup week for a lot of things, right? So they knew how important. And look, Hamilton's waited a long time for this.
Long time.
They need to know. They need to show the CFL, hey, we might not have the biggest stadium, as we know, the only a sold out highest attended crowd of just over 26,000 at Tim Hortons Field. Not exactly, the big numbers that you would see at certain other stadiums. I think that plays a factor into
Well, they didn't modify the stadium either and add seats like they do at every other stadium. Well, except
exactly.
for Edmonton.
So so what I'll say about that is I think Hamilton understood that they need to show the CFL that, hey, let's make this a little more of not once every 20 something years. Let's try to get this Grey Cup I mean, you have to, every team has to have their turn, every city has to have their turn. But I think, Hamilton wants to have their name in the conversation a little bit more than they've had in the past. So
And they
I
did
think,
a great job.
I think they did a great job.
And Mother Nature was kind too, to get to that subject too. The weather was good, but then, Mother Nature said, they winked and said, okay, we're going to give you some really nice weather, but it's going to be windy. Yeah. It was windy. It was windy.
I'm
And,
going into
and
the
you know,
top screen here.
and you know, I'm not a fan of weather affecting games. I'm not. I really not. I guess that makes me, I don't know. Some people say, "Oh, come on, that's not old school. Old school is the weather is part of the game." To me, it isn't. To me, it's part of what can take away from the game. And what we were looking at, it was like, to me, when the weather is the way it is, it's like taking 12 players and saying, okay, now let's play with 10. I get it. It's even, it's equal, but you take away two players and the game changes in a way that I don't think is better. So, but it is to the point of what people say, you got to play the weather that's being played, right? That you're playing in. So, to that extent, I'm not unhappy. But the weather was not a check mark for me. It was okay, you know.
It wasn't like Edmonton a few years ago where the turf was hard as a rock.
Absolutely.
But we knew Hamilton had wind issues where that's
Yep.
a wind tunnel because they're so close to the lake and how the stadium's constructed. That's why certain stadiums where the wind is high, they build them into the ground so that it's not
As
you're not hit,
impactful. Yeah.
yeah, not as impactful. And because Hamilton's an open field stadium, very much like Buffalo. I will say that's the comparable. The CFL is very lucky that the game didn't happen on Saturday.
Holy
because
moly.
that was like
Oh,
tornado winds. I'm not exaggerating because I talked to some media members there and they said they couldn't stand on the field because they were being lowered.
my buddy's place, the pergola got knocked over, 6x6 wood snapped. The pergola is not a roof, it's just separate pieces of wood just stand beside each other,
Yeah,
and that couldn't handle it. Yeah, no, it was terrible, and that, the folks in Kentucky had it much worse, so let's not complain too much. We
my
had it easy compared to them, so, um, yeah, but weather is a factor, and it's not one that I really like as a
no,
factor, that's all. I said it
no,
once.
and I totally agree because you know what it does allow is for teams to kind of strategize, right?
Yes.
You know, Hamilton had the advantage of deciding whether they were going to take the ball or kick it away. But then Winnipeg's like, well, we're gonna decide which quarter we want to play into the win and against the win. So I think there's that. It adds an element of strategy and
There was
realize
a lot of that. There was
right.
a lot of that, you're right. Yeah, a
But
lot.
yeah, but my opinion about the wind is that you don't want anything of the elements to really take away from the game because it impacts the mentality of the players. A quarterback may not decide to throw it as deep because he's worried about the ball being taken away by the wind. Teams are forced to run the ball more, which in some cases can be exciting, but let's be honest, the CFL makes his name on big plays through the air and not really for, running the ball 25 times in a game, 30 times in a game. That's not Let's just say we don't when the New England Patriots ran it 46 times against the Buffalo Bills last week. It wasn't the most entertaining game, you know, known to man. That's not what the CFL wants. And I think for the fact that the wind and the was still a bit of a factor, I think both teams did as well as they could to make sure that it wasn't going to completely change their
To
outcome.
to highlight why it was a factor, Hamilton doesn't take a knee, give up a rouge if it wasn't for the wind,
No, because they were
right?
playing for the field advantage.
Right.
I
And
think
and
we'll talk.
people said, "Well, shoot, there was lots of room for him to run it out." It isn't about them running it out, it's about then playing into the wind on the 10-yard line, the 12-yard line, whatever it is he might have made it out to, right?
Okay, so if we're gonna talk about this, do you want to just talk about the play right now?
Yeah, that play. Let's
Okay.
I'll just segue from the
Yeah.
weather, right? Let's
Yeah.
showing
So
why the
here,
weather made a difference.
so Winnipeg, they pull within 2 points of 2 points of Hamilton, because I think it was a field goal. So
Right.
they're on
They
this,
get a field goal,
they
and
get
then now they're kicking the ball to Hamilton.
and they are going into the win. So I guess the decision of the coaching staff and the players, Orlando Sinar said it was the players' decision, but I think the coaching staff said, look, if
There's an
you're
option.
if you're and look, Winnipeg was covering kicks very well. It's not like they were finding a lot of holes. I guarantee the message was, and this was Tim White, right? This is not
Yeah.
Poppy White, who was no, the return man. He was injured in the game, so I think that also played a bit of a factor. But the message was probably if you feel like you can't run it out and get good field position, let's take the field position and concede the point, which he did. Now, both coaches said they had no issues with that decision. Somebody brought this up to me, and I kind of thought about it because I didn't really look to see if he had let it go, not catch it, not touch it. If that ball gets kicked and bounces out of the end zone, it's not a rouge. If he doesn't touch it, I thought about that for a second. I said, if you were going to grab it and take it anyways, what I would have done, I would have let it go and see and take my chances to see if maybe you get the bounce. Because then you don't concede the point and you still end up at the 35, which is what they wanted. They wanted to be at the 35-yard line because starting at the 35 versus, let's say, at worst case, the 20,
No,
15
probably
yards.
worst case might have been 5 or 10. I know
Yeah,
he had room, but, we've seen run backs, not get more than 5 yards,
that's
and if
true.
he didn't get more than 5 yards, that's where they would have been.
Yeah, so I think I understand the decision. I think maybe if you're going to take the ball, let the ball bounce and see where it bounces to. Um, Also, I think maybe they were worried that it would have bounced inbounds and then it wouldn't have made it to the. I just think, yeah, I think in that situation they were thinking more about the field position and getting to the 35, and not really thinking about Sergio Castillo had a good leg in that game.
Yes, he did. He was perfect.
He was great in that game. I think I mean, the quarterback gets the MOP, but I think he was very easily he was the second on that list if I was voting.
Considering they were the worst field goal percentage, 60, I think, is what their percentage was, the lowest in the Canadian Football League. They went to a guy who was perfect. So, needless to say, they improved. And a game that was won as close as it was, those field goals were all important. And that's why you're saying, and I kind of agree with you, you don't want to make a kicker the MOP of a game or the MVP of a game, but it wouldn't have been an unfair decision.
No, I don't think so. But we're seeing now that kicking has become such a crucial part of any game because you need with teams struggling to score touchdowns, you need to get the points when you can, which is, I mean, Hamilton decides to kick the ball when they're on the 3 yard line on third down. Most times you go for it, but they
They
just
played the Argos too much.
yeah, they did, and I said again, I said, "Why?" Now I understood why they did it. They wanted to make it to try to make it so that Winnipeg had to get score 2 touchdowns, or a
Yeah.
touchdown and 2 field goals. Try to play the clock a bit there, but your defense was playing pretty well. Winnipeg wasn't moving the ball very well. I mean, the third quarter was partially because of the win, and they will say that as well. But I still think in that case, go for the touchdown because now you've made it to the point where it has to be a 3-score game versus a 2-score game. That's where I don't think that like the Rouge, as big as a part as it played, I don't think that's the play that people should have been really concerned about. I think not going for it on 3rd and 3 or with about 3 yards to
Wow.
go, even if it was lit, I still think like they converted in the red zone in that game. The touchdown to I believe it was
Banks and
was it
Banks.
Banks?
Banks had a touchdown too.
You know, come on, like this is the issue here. That the issue is not the Rouge. The issue is once again teams deciding to
I
play,
don't know. That's what Toronto did against Hamilton, and
and they did it
no
twice.
risk, no reward, right? I mean, you got to show some confidence in your offense, but what it tells you is that all this year we've been talking about how poorly the offenses have been, and the coaches have confirmed it by the decisions they made in the last two most important games of the season.
Yeah. There was somebody who went on a long rant about how to fix the offense in the CFL, and one of the reasons he said coaches need to play call the plays better. Stop being scared to call to go for it.
Feed
That
offense, feed the offense.
feed it.
Yes, not
Feed
the
it.
defense. I mean, when you do something like that, and we said this on the show where, the Argos lost to Hamilton, you're creating a situation where you're taking away an opportunity for your confidence to be gained by the offense, and instead you're giving it to the other team's defense. Because that's what you're saying. You're saying we can't beat you. Well, how much more confidence does a defense need than to see that kind of behavior and those kinds of decisions? So yeah, so that was a weather thing. The weather was an impact, but what I'd like to talk about too as well next is the two offenses. Dane Evans got hurt, and what was impressive about Dane Evans getting hurt was the way it was almost like karma that Mazzoli was being given a chance to resurrect his image with the Ticats fans. There were still a few Ticats fans who believe in him, but there were a lot who didn't, David. And he played really well, coming off the bench. I was impressed with the way he played, and it looked like a great story in the making.
It did. It really did. And I said to the person I was sitting beside, I said, when Dane Evans was struggling because he was not playing well
No,
in that game, I saw Mazzoli loosening up a bit on the sidelines. I said it would not surprise me that they consider it. And look, And after the game, Orlando Steinauer said we were going into the season with the belief that it was going to take both quarterbacks to get the job done. And I think he would have made the switch if Dane Evans hadn't gotten hurt. If he was still struggling, I think they were planning to make that change. They won't admit it because they don't want to do that to Dane Evans, because it's unfair to him, really, if they say that. And the reason why he left the game was because of an injury, not
Yeah.
because of his play. But I truly believe that, yeah, I think Mazzoli, the offense is different with Mazzoli. It is. And, you know, I think he simplified it a bit more. He knew the pressure was going to get to him. Both quarterbacks had unbelievable pressure on them all game long. But they simplified it. They let their playmakers make the plays that they like. That they played more of the Hamilton style offense when Mazzoli was in the game, and that when he came in, I believe.
And let's be clear as well. As far as the interception that ended up winning the game, it was it was a volleyball play. It was tap tap spike.
Yeah, no, that's a fluke. I mean, it's not a fluke play because it was well played by Winnipeg.
Well, there was intention there. It was
Yeah,
a volleyball. Yeah, it was a volleyball move all the way,
the
keeping the ball alive, and literally he passed it to his teammate, and Wilson caught it. And but that was an incredible play. It really was.
it's called a high IQ play because
Mhm.
you're really thinking about, all right, let's make sure that they're going for the pass. They're backed up on the penalty. We know they're going to pass it. Let's make sure that either we stop it or we get the ball. And they did I mean, it was unbelievable that
Great play.
they all were focused on that, to not, because usually a play like that somebody misreads it, or they get too excited and something happens. Like, the focus on that play was incredible. But yeah, I think, yeah, I don't give Mazzoli blame for that interception. He was in such a tough spot. It looked like they were driving. They get the first down, and then I saw the flag and I said, "Oh boy." I knew right then and there. Unfortunately, Hamilton fans, as soon as I saw the flag, I said, "That's it. That's it. You're not going to gain when you're at 1st and 20. You're just not going to get it on that Winnipeg defense."
No. The defense of Winnipeg was incredible, as was both defenses were awesome. I think what we saw, though, the weaknesses of the season that Hamilton had: key injuries, Laurent; quarterback injury, Evans. Quarterback comes in, throws interception. Not his fault, but the interceptions that Mazzoli threw this year, it was almost like it was bound to happen. Even though the one that did happen made a difference in the game. And I wish people would, and maybe that's why the Ticat fans were so stunned, because of the way they lost the game. That catch was, we're not meant to win this darn thing. That kind of interception, the way they won the game, it was shocking, stunning, and unbelievable if you were a Ticat fan.
I really think that, when I saw from Winnipeg was they challenged them deep, but the receivers, they catch a ball and they waited for the Hamilton defender to make the play. And how many of those plays? I think the Dembski touchdown was the best example.
Good
Let
segue.
he catches it and he waits for the tackle to come to him. He doesn't try to go into the tackle, because then he sidesteps and right into the end zone. And they did
Right.
that a few times. And I feel like they understood. I think this Winnipeg offense understood how to beat this Hamilton pass defense, which Montreal figured it out a little bit. Toronto couldn't figure it out at all. And I think Winnipeg really understood that this is an aggressive defense. Aggressive means they're going to overplay. There's going to be some overplays, and that They're going to be too aggressive, put them out of a play if you just be patient. I think that's the key there is patience because
Yeah.
Zach
Well,
Collaros needed some patience. He needed to learn patience in that game, and he did.
they missed Laurent, obviously, and
Yeah.
then you talked about Dembski. Good segue. Best Canadian in the game. There's one thing that both winners, the MVP being Caleros, and of course the best Canadian being Dembski. There's two things we learned there, and people, I learned something from it. Never give up, always have hope, and keep working, and something good will happen. Both those players did not have a good first half of the game, first three quarters even. It was the fourth quarter that created the greatness that both of those players had.
It's a reminder that the Grey Cup any CFL game will always, I would say 80% of the time, get decided in the fourth quarter.
Last 3 minutes.
You know, it was a rough first half. Like let's
It
both
was.
both teams tried really hard to do things that seemed unconventional, and it didn't work. There was a real tough execution on offense. And I was like, oh, is this going to be a game where the offense just doesn't get it done, and people's issues with the CFL's offensive play then becomes the storyline? I was like, oh, and then
Terrible.
you saw the execution.
Ugh.
It took the fourth quarter, and I think the desperation and the thought of we have no this is the last quarter. We got to leave it all out there. We can't play this conservative anymore. And I think that, and in Winnipeg, obviously having the wind in their backs, I think they decided, okay, we have the advantage mentally. I mean, we talked to them on the field, Frank. The mentality of they knew that fourth quarter was theirs. They
Yeah.
knew it, and they played that to their advantage. They played more desperate. They executed the plays when they needed to.
Dembski made the moves he needed to make when he needed to make them. And then you have the case of Zach Caleros, who is a, a wonderful kid in his 30s, who, I'm so happy for him. I had the pleasure of watching him 12 years ago, 11 years ago, um, and 10 years ago, really, and watching him develop as a quarterback, seeing the kind of guy he was, and then in the past few years, being given an opportunity to show that he can win the big games and make a game his. He has been outstanding, and then he ends up with health concerns. Last year he finally made it, to play late in the season. He was healthy. He had a really good team to play for. He had receivers and a running back, I mean, to die for. Incredible, incredible talent to work around, wins a championship. And then he gets a chance, David, to be part of the defense of the cup. And those guys in Winnipeg, the Bombers were, from wire to wire, the best team in the Canadian Football League. We all know narrowly defeating Hamilton in this game, because that's the truth, narrowly. But to be a winner, you have to win, and Winnipeg knows how to do it, and this group knows how to do it.
Yeah, it helps that they had been there before and they've done it and they know what it takes. Just a quick thing on Zach. I think a lot of people wrote him off in 2019 when he got that concussion in Saskatchewan, and he
Yeah,
gets traded to Toronto. And really, he was left there because Toronto was like, "Well, we might have you play with us next year if we can get you healthy." And then Winnipeg calls and is looking for a quarterback, and then it all changes there. I'm happy for Zach because of that reason, because I thought a lot of people were writing him off for something that was not his fault, really. Not like he gets blindsided in that hit from Simone Lawrence. I said that would be a really crappy way for your career to end, and so
absolutely.
that's why I'm happy for Zach. But I also think that Winnipeg has done what I think every CFL team should be trying to emulate. We always talk about trying to emulate and copy a formula.
Absolutely.
Winnipeg has found that formula, and it's my favorite word that I talked about with some of them during the week: continuity.
Well,
Chemistry.
that's the word. That's the word that's going around now, and that's the word that defined Hamilton
Yes.
and Winnipeg. We have that kind of almost continuity going on in Montreal. They're trying to establish a bit of that continuity. Yes, they're bringing in new players, but the point is they're not letting go of some key players that they want to keep. Figure out who your central group is and try to keep them around together. And Hamilton has done that. Winnipeg clearly has done it. Teams on the other end of the scale, BC, Toronto, and then Calgary, because with Calgary, it's their players their veterans have chosen to leave. So that's kind of hard to avoid if, and tell you something though, Winnipeg's going to have a hard time keeping all their players this time around. Claros is going to be free. Andrews is going to be free. Um, you know, they're going to have a tough time.
I think the benefit of those players you just mentioned they're not young, they're
No,
older, and so really I think they're more mature and know what they want. Maybe Claros thinks maybe this is the last one of the last few times I can get maybe more
what
money.
will keep the band together is really what the question is, David. That's the
Yeah,
question. Can
I
they
think
keep
part
the
of it
band
is
together?
will Zach Collaros. I think it comes down to Zach Collaros. I personally do for Winnipeg because I think they have all the other elements in place that they can bring in guys to supplant other positions. I mean, you can't replace a Willie Jefferson, but you can find some good players. You can find some good pass rushers, some good defensive backs. And offensive lineman, I think, is also the toughest one too. They've really got to keep that group together. But I think it's
Yeah.
Zach Collaros that's really going to change if a team decides, hey, we want Zach Collaros, we're going to pay him a lot of money, and Zach decides to go that route, good on him. He
Where would
deserves.
he go? Where do you see him going? We only got a couple of minutes left, so
Okay, I'm not gonna I'm gonna sound like a homer, but I really do think Toronto will try to make a case because I think his veteran savviness. I think they need a quarterback, and I don't think they have the answer in Toronto right now. So I think Toronto would definitely take a look. I don't think you can discount Ottawa. Paul LaPolice wants that quarterback. And I think that relationship with Zach, he'll try to use that maybe to try to get him there.
and for me, I think I I just happen to think that Claros is a pretty genuine guy, and he seems really enamored by and loyal to. It talks like he's going to be loyal to the Winnipeg experience. He's really happy with the Winnipeg experience,
And
and
it
he
would
would like
surprise
to
me.
continue. But I get what you're saying. It doesn't matter. Like just because a player wants to be somewhere doesn't mean he's going to be there. There are a lot of reasons why players leave. They don't all have to do with money. They don't all have to do with his situation. They don't all have to do with other players that they're playing with. But any of the above could be the reason why a player switches groups, right?
Yeah. No, and quarterback is such a pivotal position that there's going to be some movement this off season, and I think a lot of teams will be waiting for Claros, and I think I think Winnipeg's top of the list because he knows how to be successful there. They're going to try to keep everything together. So I don't know, be tough to see him leave, but you never know in the CFL. Players move all the time.
The coaches owe in both Hamilton and of course Winnipeg. Two great coaches. Uh, Hamilton. Well, maybe we'll talk next week. The question that there's a defensive coordinator position open in Washington, and what an untimely way to ask that question.
Yeah, I know we're at time here. I'll just say time and place to ask a question.
That wasn't it.
That wasn't
that,
it. That really wasn't it.
wasn't it.
So we'll talk more about that. We'll see. Maybe by the time we have our
Information.
show next week, we'll be
Some
talking
more
about.
information.
But
Yeah.
we'll talk about that more next week. But
Thanks, David.
thank you. Frank.
Okay, for David Morassutti, I'm Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, airing live Mondays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Until next time.